Hey everyone, Sari here, and welcome to the highlights from this week of Astra Season offense matches. Guinevere being a bonus unit this week made it very easy to decide who I wanted to focus on. Her legendary variant is an extremely solid ranged tank thanks to a Brave Dimitri flavored stat line. While her physical defense is fairly low, her res-based true damage reduction more than makes up for it. Having a full special fighter effect makes it easy for her to charge, and recharge, Miracle, while denying her opponent's specials, and her true damage and tome slaying give her an easy time finishing off her opponents. Magic Nullfollow is an important addition to her kit, especially when she isn't using a damaging special. The Pierce lets her break through the various glass cannon attackers, who rely on passive damage reduction to survive their fights, and the Nullfollow makes it much safer for her to tank melee hits without countering them along the way. She also has access to a ridiculous amount of healing. With Finish, Burns New Way, and Gatekeeper support, she's typically getting at least 21 healing per combat, which is more than enough to sustain through all of the unmitigatable start-of-combat damage flying around. Miracle works as a reliable backup plan, giving her a way to survive large spikes of damage from units like Windy Claude. The other team members are here for support. Gatekeeper, as usual, is a great way to provide stats, healing, and penalties from a safe distance, while shutting down enemy warp effects. Garrick plays a similar role, offering cross-map immunity to panic and visible stat penalties, which is very useful when dealing with Sanaki ploys or Camilla sabotages. Plumeria is a crucial third support here. The mobility of a Kanto-enabled dance and soaring guidance is always useful, but her ability to donate dodge is what really lets Guinevere's true damage reduction shine, and the adaptive damage doesn't hurt either. Naga and Asher are mostly just here for their stat bonuses. Naga also offers dragon slaying and the potential for some extra long-distance stat support, and her Kanto mobility always helps to navigate through tight corners of the map. So let's get to the first match. This match was an unexpected treat near the beginning of the week. They've set up a really scary cav line here. The maxed out Sanaki is a particularly intimidating threat, with Yunaka, Dagger, Gulveg, and an impressive Corrin backing her up. Dagger's Rally Up and the formation bonus from Oath are a great way to set up a Pathfinder trap by rallying forward onto Yunaka, which extends the reach of both sides of the map. Planting a Kanto-controlled Gatekeeper in the middle of it all is a good substitute for a save armor. It's difficult to hit and run against this team without some form of warp or Kanto, especially with the wall of structures in the front and the block of traps below Corrin and Gulveg. So denying those tools does about the same thing as trying to find an armor who can survive the latest player phase nukes.
Why not?
Tanking this isn't really ideal either. The team can do up to 56 start of combat damage in one turn, on top of the various flavors of true damage, pierce, damage types, and multi-hit options that they have between them. That isn't going to stop us here, though. I did need to take the first turn to open up the structures on the left side of the map. They made it just barely too cramped to set up on the first turn. But with them out of the way, we can have Plumeria dance Guinevere forward, and set her up to tank the world. Yunaka goes in first, which I did expect. The combination of 90% Pierce and Fatal Smoke means that she does get a solid chunk of damage to stick to Guinevere here, bringing her just below half. But the 50% Pierce that Gwyn has means that she can one-shot Yunaka on the counter. And with Yunaka out of the way, there's not much on their team that's going to really threaten her. The start of combat damage does a lot to mitigate Gwyn's healing, but even with 14 coming in that she can't mitigate, if she's not taking damage from the individual attacks, she's still going to end up out-healing the team. It did help a lot that using Plumeria's dance debuffed Sanaki's res by enough to make sure that she couldn't deploy Guinevere for this enemy phase, which meant that we're not getting hit with an exposure debuff on all of these combats. I think Guinevere would have been able to handle it anyway. With Garrick neutralizing her penalties, it would only end up being a plus 10 damage per hit. But I decided to play it safe. We didn't quite get to tank Dogger here, which was unfortunate. I would have liked to enemy phase her at the same time. But now that she's the only threat left on the team, there's no reason to let her survive until the next enemy phase. Mostly because this pot in the top right corner is already going to be a bit of a pain to reach. So I don't want to have to try and navigate around Dogger any longer than I need to. Moving all the way forward here lets us head off their Mirabilis before she becomes a problem trying to reach both of these pots, and lets us make sure that she stays in place this turn. And from there, we can't reach this top right pot quite yet, but we can just have Guinevere tank Mirabilis one more time, and then get ready to close out the match next turn.
Greetings. Hey. I am the answer.
Got a plan?
Reporting for duty.
I will not lose my way.
The week got a lot quieter overall after that first match, and it was only in the last two that I found another fun setup for Gwyn to tackle. This map is a bit of a mixed cav line, opting to use the charge-enabled Hinoka and Camilla as two of their main threats, along with a very impressive Wrath and Black Knight. Camilla in particular can be a major problem for tanking strategies thanks to the combination of sabotaging enemy units and donating Pierce to herself and her allies. With Freyr securing their start of turn effects, and the Black Knight and Femortis safeguarding them, it can be a tricky team to approach, especially after the two hardy fighters and Freyr's defensive benefits come online. Like the previous match, the structures in the front keep things cramped enough that I take the first turn to open things up a bit while moving into position. The safety fence buys us our first turn, and we can start moving in from there. Naga can reposition Plumeria up, and then we can smite Gwyn into that vacated spot to warp forward onto the forest tile. From there we can dense her, and move her onto the defense tile while opening up this spot for Hinoka to potentially attack from. Gatekeeper moves in behind her, and we can settle into watch. It is important to keep her 3 spaces away from her allies here to avoid getting cleaved by the sabotage Camilla applies. And while Camilla does actually outspeed Guinevere here, and gets the 40% of attack as start of combat damage, that's the only damage she gets to do to Gwyn. And it's not really enough to put Gwyn in any real danger. Hinoka's in the same boat. While she can do some damage with her attack, even with the start of combat damage, it's barely enough to out-damage Guinevere's healing. And when Femortis moves in next to take a swing for 0 damage, that's when the team knows they're in trouble. Gullveig, a lot like the last match, can do that 14 start of combat damage, but without doing any damage with her actual attack, it just means Guinevere's going to start out-healing the damage she takes. And Wrath can do a little bit more damage than Gullveig managed, but it's not enough to concern Guinevere or let him survive this combat. I was expecting things to be pretty straightforward from here, but I did underestimate this hardy fighter Aegis Femortis a little bit. We can't tackle him here, and any damage we do would just get completely undone by this healing tower on the following turn. So instead, I decide to just tank him from this defense tile. This means that Fomortis himself is never going to move to attack, and also means that Freyr gets baited into attacking us from a much more forward position than he started in. While that doesn't do anything for us here, Fomortis is still protecting their entire squad, it does mean that we can now bait Freyr far enough away from Fomortis that Fomortis won't be able to move back into save range this turn. I move Gatekeeper over too. I'm not worried about Freyr attacking him, it's much more likely that he chases Guinevere instead. And thanks to some aerobatics and guidance shenanigans, we pull all the way into the corner. As expected, Freyr goes after Guinevere, and moves too far away to get saved this turn. I decide to smite Plumeria onto this bolt trap. I wasn't sure if it was real, but whether or not it is, I'm not worried about the damage Guinevere takes here. She's going to get a lot of the health right back anyway from attacking Freyr and finishing him off, and Freyr wouldn't have been a problem for her to take out even when he's at full health.
Why not?
And at this point, we only have one major problem left on the map, and his name is Fomortis. We still can't take him out here, and with the healing tower intact, any damage I do with this attack is going to get undone before we can take advantage of it. So we just pick up the Aether Pots, take another objective off the map, and bait these two armors away from their defense tiles. Things are still a little more complicated than I would like here. Not being able to one-shot Fomortis means that his Nightmare would stop Plumeria from dancing Gwyn. So I just decide to take one more turn to handle this, break the healing tower, and then use the danced attack to drain most of Fomortis' health, and also turn off his Aegis. With Fomortis down to 4 hit points, Gwyn isn't going to have a problem finishing him off this next turn, or surviving Black Knight when he attacks into her here. It's honestly been a long time since a match took me all the way to the 7th turn, but it is still a turn we can use. And with a 4 hit point Fomortis and no Aegis, there's not much that's going to stand in the way of Gwyn closing this out.
I'll do it. I will not lose my way.
This match was a fun way to close out the week. It's a fairly standard corner setup using Fomortis to safeguard the team from ranged approaches, while Cordelia's dual strikes help them to crack open any tanking strategies. Soren gives the team a sneaky second bodyguard after the first turn too, letting Freyr be a pesky roadblock to any Gale Forcers. And the duo Asker does an excellent job of accelerating the team's specials. Sanaki's position seems a bit awkward at first, but it lets her threaten both defense tiles with Ploy, and makes them much more dangerous to tank on. Even if that res flaw isn't really doing her any favors for that. We're able to get things started on the first turn this time, after warping over the wall and opening it up a bit. We can dance Guinevere onto the defense tile, and set her up to tank the team.
Greetings! There is but one future.
Freyr moves in for the first attack. The dual strike does give him an impressive amount of damage to throw at Guinevere, but unfortunately for him, it's nowhere near enough. And she ends up healing back above half health, even after that. Snaki gets her start of combat damage, and absolutely nothing else. And after Cordelia moves forward, That opens up some room for a gold egg to do effectively the same thing, just with higher visible numbers.
Serpent, arise.
And then Esker comes in and does the same thing.
Felicitations.
Soren can't quite reach us here, unfortunately, so we'll just have to deal with him next turn instead.
As you request.
Thankfully, since Formortis was the 7th unit, we don't have to worry about getting through him before taking out Freyr. And a dance lets us just move Guinevere over to tank Soren and knock out Cordelia in the same action.
Cautious.
It is the last match of the week, so we don't need these Aether pots, but I would still like to pick them up before we finish, and having Gatekeeper test that Hex Trap is an important first step.
I am the answer.
Hey,
Soren does get to throw a Flare at Guinevere,
No quarter.
but even with that and half Pierce, it's still not enough to actually do damage to her. Which just leaves Formortis left to pick off on the next turn. Gatekeeper can grab our first Aether pot, Guinevere can grab the second, and then we can just have Plumeria dance her, and close out the week.
As you request.
This week was a lot of fun. Like with Corrin last week, it's a treat to see Quinn tanking her way through some of the strongest attackers in the game without breaking her stride. I'm going to miss having her as a consistent part of my teams now that the Water Month is ending, but she'll be back again soon enough. I do have a Discord channel if you'd like to hang out and chat. There's a link in the description, and I've also got a Patreon link there if you'd like to help support the channel. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video, good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.